everybody. Welcome to Shine On. I'm Kacey. So happy you could join us today. I am very excited about this show. Very, very excited. Is your life screwed up? Oh, we're going to fix that today. Welcome, Priscilla Keresey, my beautiful guest, who is also a self-help coach. She wears lots and lots of hats, and they're all very helpful. So she has a wonderful book called Fix Your Screwed Up Life. Hello.
Hello. Thanks for having me.
So why this book? Why now?
Well, I have three groups of clients that I work with. I'm a hypnotist, so I see a lot of clients for quitting smoking, self-esteem, self-confidence, public speaking, driving over bridges, I mean, you name it. I also have, I see clients who want to get a little closer to their spiritual calling, so I do some spiritual coaching. I'm a minister. And I have a third group of clients who come to see me for intuitive consulting. I'm a psychic and a medium. And over the years that I've been serving these three pretty distinct groups, you'd be surprised that they're pretty separate, but these three distinct groups of clients, it occurred to me that, you know, even though they came with all of these different problems, weight loss, or, you know, what's my calling, or, you know, does my loved one in the spirit world forgive me? I recognized just kind of out of the blue, that's why I know it was inspired, that at the core of each one of these problems was a sense of unworthiness for each of these people. They didn't feel that they deserved forgiveness. They didn't feel that they could, you know, be attractive and slim and lose weight and still be happy and successful. And so as I was putting some of these things together, I tried it out on myself, and I tried it out on some clients who were willing, and I thought, I got to write this down.
Right. And this was born. Fix your screwed up life. Recover your inherent self-esteem and start living the life of your dreams. So you see people for spiritual coaching. You see people for hypnosis. And you see clients in the psychic medium realm. And you find that at the base of all of this, if they come with a lack, it's low self-esteem. So that's like the great epidemic.
I think that is at the core of every single problem a person thinks they have. Okay,
so let me ask you about this. Did you ever have low self-esteem?
I'm the poster child for low self-esteem. I had terrible self-esteem growing up, and it didn't always manifest like we think it would. You know, somebody who's, you know, a real wallflower, because I wasn't. I was really extroverted, and I took up a bunch of cool hobbies, and I really put myself out there, and you know, started a bunch of businesses. But in hindsight, a lot of that motivation came from trying to be somebody different from who I was, because who I was, I didn't believe was a person who was worthy unless I did extraordinary hobbies or I had some crazy talent. So that was, looking back, as I started to think about, well, is it really this at the core of everything? And as I said, I looked to myself first, you know, kind of tried it out on myself, and I thought, oh yeah, that's me too.
So at one point you were trying to prove something.
For many years I was trying to prove something.
And I think everybody can relate to that, because I think that's part of growing up too. Part of living, we're trying to prove something, but people can go through their whole life, I think I hear you saying, always trying to prove or not feeling enough.
Yeah, and so spending all of this energy putting out these little fires when the real fire that needs to be put out is in here. Okay. You know, so here I can lose weight, I can quit smoking, I can get a better job, I can get another degree. But somehow that I still don't feel like I deserve it. That's one thing. You know, people who have imposter syndrome, they're at a certain place in their job and they think, oh God, I hope nobody finds me out because I do not deserve to be here. Yeah. You know, and so if we could just take our attention away from all of these little problems that, and they are problems. Being overweight can be a problem, and smoking or self-medicating. Or you know, I have clients who I have to gently disconnect from because they are so indecisive or so unsure of themselves that they want a psychic reading every week.
Right.
Is this the guy who's going to be is this first date going to be worth it? You know, I'm talking to two guys on Match.com. Who's the one I should pick?
Yeah, they can't.
And they want to, you know, they're surrendering control. That's another symptom of low self-esteem.
Low self-esteem, letting somebody else make the decisions.
Right.
When in your life, if you don't mind me asking, did you turn the corner, and it might have been a slow and gradual corner, and all of a sudden you felt differently? Or maybe, if you don't know when, Maybe you can share the how.
Let's see. I think, you know, that's a very good question. I always felt that there was something wrong with the way that I felt about life. Mm-hmm. In the beginning, it's because I had low self-esteem, but then I had enough, I had done enough exploring and gained just enough self-awareness to know that there's something wrong, but not know how to fix it. Mm-hmm. So I did, oh man, I tried everything. I searched a bunch of different, you know, faith practices. Mm-hmm. I did, you know, law of attraction, Abraham Hicks. I mean, prosperity, everything. Yeah. And so I think it wasn't really until maybe I was 45, so 10 years ago, that I went, wait a minute, you know, how much longer am I going to keep starting something new? Right. And I can tell you one moment that was very, very important for me. I was thinking about going back to school again for another degree to be a counselor. But you ran out
of wall space for your little diplomas. Right. Yeah.
I thought, you know, I won't be able to get further in my work as a self-help specialist unless I have some sort of a degree. Mm-hmm. And I was talking to my sweetheart about this, and he said, "You're so scattered." And I got really defensive. I'm not scattered. I have to provide all of these services for all of my clients. I have to be able to, and I just yacked back at him for I don't know how long. But a seed was planted, and I started to think about it, and I thought, you know what? I'm just spreading myself so thin, and I you know, and I had rationalized it so many ways. Well, I have a lot of interests. Well, my clients might want to know how to do this, or might want to come to me for that, and so I thought, you know what? I'm not going to go back to school to be a therapist. I'm going to focus on one thing. Of all the things, I was a craniosacral therapist at the time. I was a Reiki master. I did energy healing. I did hypnosis. I did readings. Oh man, I mean, when I went to a networking group and someone said, "What do you do?" I'm like, let me pull out my parchment here and begin to read. And I thought, I'm going to focus on being a psychic medium this year. Mm-hmm. And all I did, and this is the how that you were asking about, all I did was, anytime I had a daydream, like as I'm falling asleep or riding in the car and letting my mind drift, and I was picturing my prosperous, blessed future, I would tag on, "That's because I'm a great psychic medium." Oh. And I'd fall asleep at night, and I'd think about all the things I'd done during the day, and I'd say, "That's because I'm a great psychic medium."
Wow.
And I'll tell you something, that was the first book I wrote. I wrote that book, my first one over there, in about 3 months. And I'd had several of them started. Right. It was this one, It Will All Make Sense When You're Dead. That was my first book on psychic mediumship. Okay. Wrote that in a few months. My client base quadrupled. And I had all the prosperity and blessings and abundance I could imagine, because I stopped trying to be so everything to everyone. Part of the motivation, which was because I didn't know what I had inside. And so giving myself permission to focus on one thing and believe that I was good at it, and that I could be better at it, and that I could serve people with it. And that, especially in hindsight, halfway through that year, that was right about in January of 2010 maybe, 2009, where I just really flipped around.
So Priscilla has 3 books. It Will All Make Sense When You're Dead was the first. Nobody Gets Out of This Alive is the second. And the third, Fix Your Screwed Up Life. And you've worn a lot of hats. And you've come around to focus in one direction. And that was when scattered Priscilla, even though you may have been scattered, but you were effective in lots of different areas.
Maybe.
Yeah. So you came around to settle into one facet of your gorgeousness, right? Where was spirit in that? Let me put it this way, where is God in your self-esteem?
Front and center.
Front and center.
I think it's impossible to really grasp our worthiness. Well, I'm not going to say impossible, because everybody has a different understanding of who their creator is. For me, it was that the immortal part of all of us. You know, you look in the mirror and you say, I'm 17, I'm 30, I'm 50, and you might look different, but you still feel the same. That's the immortal part of us. That's perfect in every way. And when I was able to consciously stop trying to, you know, build that sense of perfection up from all of these activities I was doing, and let myself let that inherent self-esteem that is given to all of us by God, I believe, shine through. And one thing at a time, it was miraculous.
Yeah, one thing at a time, and your self-esteem grew. You know, and it makes me think that sometimes, now this is crazy, but it makes me think that sometimes we keep ourselves very busy and very scattered. And I'm using your sweetie's word there, very busy and very busy, because we could almost be afraid of how bright our light could be if we stopped and grew in one place.
I think that's accurate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I only know this because as you're telling your story, I'm like, man, I was on the road right behind her. I read all those books. I wore lots of hats. I was never a hypnotist or a psychic medium, but, you know, doing all the things. I had my own hats, but yeah. And then when you finally say, I am this, God says, yes, you are.
Right.
Yes, you are.
And it doesn't have to be, you know, and I wasn't just that. I spent that year being the best psychic medium I could be, and I got exponentially better, and my client base grew, which means, and most of my work is by referral, so obviously my audience thought I got exponentially better too. And then when that was in a really solid place, and I knew that I have a right to do this, and I deserve abundance and prosperity with this, and I deserve to get better at it, then it's on cruise control. And the next thing that I wanted to do, I could give my full attention to and know that this wasn't going to be, this wasn't going to have to continually be stoked.
Right. And it brings me to the favorite line in my favorite poem, the Desiderata. You are a child of the universe, no less than the trees and the stars. You have a right to be here.
Yeah.
You have a right to be here. Now, you could have said, and that's because I'm a fantastic hypnotherapist, or that's because I'm a fantastic author. You really could have chosen anything, right?
Yes, yes, and I have in subsequent years since that. Yep.
Right.
And it's just expanded my understanding of the engine that's in all of us.
The engine that's in all of us.
That never runs out of fuel.
Yeah.
And that's the divine in each one of us. And that's why I say, you know, when we recover our inherent self-esteem, it's ours. We don't have to earn it.
No.
We don't have to earn God's love. We don't have to be free of sin or bad behaviors. You know, it's our birthright.
And once that really sinks into your bones and your marrow and every single part of you, oh man,
right?
Life
but it's
gets
scary
easier.
Because we get these messages that, you know, to focus on yourself, especially women, I think, certainly of my generation, you know, that it's selfish.
Yeah.
Or don't blow your own horn, or nobody wants to, you know, and it's, I'm not talking about arrogance or bragging.
Right.
You know, the arrogance and bragging comes from low self-esteem.
Yeah.
It's all talk. It's all out here on the surface, because we know deep inside, or we feel deep inside, we're nothing, so let me bully and make a lot of noise and call attention to myself and grab the spotlight. But when you recover that inherent self-esteem, you just enjoy this equanimity and peace and serenity. You don't have to do that stuff.
You let yourself off the hook. You let everybody else off the hook.
Right.
And finding that beautiful, wonderful sun inside of you does not make you braggadocious. It doesn't make you, it makes the opposite. It makes you humble.
Because you're secure and you're in yourself, and you know, I don't have to compete with you. I don't have to cut you off in traffic. I don't have to, you know, I'll tell you something. I used to have a bit of a jealous nature when I'd be around other beautiful women, such as yourself.
Oh, please.
And once I recovered my inherent self-esteem, I could enjoy another person's attractiveness or success, and not feel threatened by it, or oh, let me unbutton one more button so I can get attention too, you know?
Right, right.
And I have a good friend who is, she's 15 years younger than I am. She makes twice what I make. She's a lovely young person. And any other time in my life that would have been really, it would have made me feel insecure.
Yeah.
And now, you know, I just can celebrate all of her successes and her terrific salary and her going up through the corporate ranks and not feel like, oh, if only I'd done that.
I should
if
have
only
taken that
I'd
road.
stayed in that. Right.
Now you can celebrate everybody's beauty because you're carrying yours around.
And that makes, I think, for a more present friend and a more present spouse and sibling and everything that we need to be.
So now that we've psychoanalyzed your life, let's fix everybody else's life. All right, fix your screwed up life. People are watching, tuning in, listening. What's the first thing they should do if they want to feel better about life on Earth?
I would say the first thing to do is consider that the source is low self-esteem.
Okay.
Often people will say, I don't have low self-esteem. And when I was reflecting on myself, too, when I was first thinking about this book, I thought, no, I don't have low self-esteem.
Oh, yeah.
I'm confident, I feel great. So I would say consider that.
Yeah.
And just turn your attention inward and ask yourself, how do I feel about myself?
Yeah.
And wait for the answer. Because what people do when they don't want to, or they're nervous about an emotion that might come up, you know, they might rush into answering that or rush into minimizing or mitigating that feeling. Well, let me have a glass of wine while I'm considering how I feel about myself.
Or three.
Or three. Or go on and have a cigarette first. Or let me do this other busy work task first.
Right.
All of those isms, alcoholism and workaholism and all of, you know, shopaholics, all of this is or can be a behavior that helps us to avoid how do I feel about myself.
Right. And it also, it can feed a hole inside.
Yeah.
Stuff that hole with stuff, with busyness.
Right. I can try to stuff that hole, but it
try
never
to stuff
does.
that hole,
Yeah.
but it never, never, never does. I've been in the public eye for a really long time in Westchester in the Hudson Valley. I used to lose 2 nights sleep every time I had a public appearance.
Really?
Every time. I'd be up the night before. Oh my God, I have to be on stage at the Paramount. Oh my God, I'm not going to get it right. Oh my God, why am I doing this? Then I would do the event. Then I'd stay up all that night. Oh my God, why did I say this? Why did I wear that? It was terrible. Like I was so sleep deprived for years until I finally realized all these public appearances had nothing to do with me. Everyone was looking to see who was coming behind me because I was always introducing someone else. And once I realized that, I relaxed a little more and found a little more self-esteem. Like, you know, get over yourself a little bit. So yes, I understand what you mean when you say it can take energy to
look at where, just, you know, I want to ask you about that if you can remember. I know that was some time ago, but where do you think that feeling of nervousness came from?
Where did it come from? From what you said before, I was really sure somebody was going to say, take the microphone away from that girl, she's awful. And just a couple of months ago, we got a new boss, this new CEO. I said, I'm going to be found out now, you know.
Right, right.
30-year career, but they're going to come for me now. And, you know, I'm all right with it if they do. So I think a little bit of that, there's a healthy little bit of that.
Sure, yeah.
You know, that still lingers. But yeah, no, I was, just because people are in the public eye, or like you said before, just because people are outgoing, doesn't mean they're comfortable.
Right, right.
Doesn't mean they're comfortable. Comfort takes time.
Yeah, it does.
So step number 1, consider that you may have low self-esteem.
Right, and ask yourself, how do I feel about myself? Not what do I think about myself, but how do I feel about myself?
Yeah.
And you know, you might have to ask this a number of times as you're falling asleep at night, in a quiet moment, you know, while you're waiting in line at the DMV.
Right.
And just wait and see what happens, and give yourself a little bit of slack. In sometimes you might be angry when you're asking yourself that question. Why do I have to answer this question? You know, I'm fine. Or you might feel very sad. Oh, I had such a deprived and neglected childhood. Or my sweetheart just left me. I'm getting divorced. You know. So, but if we keep asking ourselves, how do I feel about myself? My suspicion, my hypothesis is that those of us who suffer from low self-esteem, losers,
Losers. L-O
That's my acronym
for low.
for low, and then S for self and E for esteem. So we have lose, we're losers. Most losers feel somehow unworthy.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's a large percent of the population.
I think it is too. And listen, we have to, the traditional public school system doesn't help. Right. Because we go into school, and obviously we need schooling, but when we're graded for, in our performance, we learn early on that doing is what adds to our sense of self-awareness or sense of self-deserving and self-esteem.
Accomplish the task and get a gold star, you're good.
Right. And if you can't,
you're bad.
You're a failure even.
You're a failure.
Right.
Right.
And it's such a public grading system, I mean, my sister and I were good students, naturally, my older sister and I. My younger brother struggled a little bit. So we easily brought home A's in junior high and high school. My brother had difficulty spelling, and it was much more challenging for him. And I felt awkward for him that, we'd sit around the table and my parents would ask, how was school today? How was the test? And they weren't trying to, compare us to each other. But I can remember sitting across from my brother and his face would just fall. Yeah. When I got an A in spelling, I got an A in math, I'm doing this, I got asked to participate in this history class, or I'm going to be taking AP, science, whatever. And my brothers, I didn't pass my spelling test.
Right. So it's hard to go through life as we know it on this planet without, feeling like a person with low self-esteem. Right, maybe it's kind of stacked against us that way. So let's take some steps now to recover. One of the things in your book, changed my life, it's when you say, stop complaining. How does that play into recovering your inner wonderfulness?
I believe that when we complain a lot, first of all, I believe in the law of attraction. I think energetically, and as I know from being a hypnotist, that subconsciously what we focus on, we get more of. Whatever we turn our attention to, whether you believe in the New Age description, which is the law of attraction, or a more logical sort of strategic thinking like hypnosis, what we focus on just expands. And this has been shown in a number of studies. And so if we're complaining, a couple of things are happening. One, we're just drawing more of that same energy to ourselves, and we're surrounding ourselves with people who also complain. So this is just like this energy sump that goes into focusing on what's not right. Right. I think that actually has a physical impact on us as well. Probably, but also kind of sustains this negative mood. Yeah. And by repeating these negative complaints, whatever, because people don't generally, or let me say complainers don't generally just complain about one thing. Complainers complain about the same thing over and over and over again. Sure,
it's a style of communication.
Right, and it's a habit.
It's a habit, yeah.
People who have recovered their healthy self-esteem also complain, but it's generally situational, and it's not just this is, as you said, how you communicate.
Right, and it's also water soluble. It'll wash right off you.
Right,
it's not deep in your soul, and you're going to grind away at it. Right. It's like, oh yeah, I really don't care for that. That's not my thing. Whoosh, and it's gone. Yeah,
or to the dry cleaner, you didn't do a good job, or whatever, whatever that might be. But it doesn't it doesn't add into all the other complaints that one has. Also, losers tend to complain because they feel so out of control and so helpless themselves to make any changes, or they feel indecisive, and so there's this overarching feeling of helplessness, and that's where a lot of complaining can come from too.
Does that make them feel powerful when they complain?
Briefly.
Briefly.
Right. And also misery loves company. Yeah. So if you're feeling lost and upset, and it's acceptable to complain about your weight, or it's acceptable to complain about the wait at the DMV, and you can, jaw with the person next to you about it. Yeah. That's a pretty safe way to get some negative energy out without anybody looking too deeply at you. Yeah. And losers don't want anybody. They can't even look that deeply at themselves.
And if everything is energy, words have energy, words have power, you don't want that constantly in your sphere.
Right.
So we are sure, very, very sure, that there is something wonderful inside of everyone. Without a doubt.
Without a doubt.
Without a doubt, everybody was born with it.
That's right.
So if you have a pulse, you are worthy.
Right.
If you're on this planet, you are worthy. We don't care how or what you did, doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter. And the spirit people, I as a medium, I talk to, you know, dozens of dead people every day. And they all say the same thing. Even if they were the most miserable SOBs when they were alive, they don't hold grudges. No. What we come in with, we go out with, which is that perfect sense of self.
Yes.
So when you get into the spirit world, you're not going to haunt anybody. You're not going to stay mad at anybody. You're not going to follow someone around and say, "Oh, you shouldn't get married again. You were supposed to love me till you died." You know. So
right.
so
yeah,
you know, and even a lot of my clients who come for mediumship, for spirit communication, one of their concerns is, you know, her last wishes were this, or his last wishes were this, and we couldn't get it done. Or we didn't have the money, or the family fell apart afterwards. They must be rolling over in their grave. No, they're not. There isn't a spirit person I've ever met who says, you know, who comes with judgment from the spirit world. So in my personal experience, I know that what we leave this earth with is the perfect spark that we came in with.
The perfect spark that we came in with. It never leaves us.
It never leaves us.
It's always there. So if you're feeling like you don't know where your perfect spark is, you should pick up Fix Your Screwed Up Life by Priscilla Keresey, who has been my hypnotist. That was a wonderful experience. I've been in her medium circles. That was a wonderful experience. You are as true as they come, as grounded as they come, and I'm so happy for your success.
Well, thank you.
In the minute we have left, what shall we say to people who maybe need a little help with their self-esteem?
Keep trying. Just try to get away from people who are horrible to you or who are angry around you, and even if you can't, when you lay down to sleep at night and you're the only one who's in your head, you can just remind yourself that God loves you and that you are beloved and there is nothing wrong with you. There's nothing wrong with you. Maybe you've made mistakes, maybe there's something wrong with some of your behaviors, but who you are is perfect.
Yeah. And you're still going to make mistakes, and you're always going to be imperfect. We're always going to be imperfect, and we're still going to be perfect where it counts.
That's right.
Always, always. Priscilla, thank you.
Just like you are. You're perfect.
Yeah, I think I got it from you. Priscilla A. Keresey, Fix Your Screwed Up Life, fixyourscreweduplife.com. Please come back. Let's talk more.
I will. I'd love to. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for shining on. Thank you to Cass and Mike and George and Travelin' Joe. It's so fun to shine on with you. Thanks. See you next time. Oh, and Marie.